when there was a case relating to the attempt to erect a huge, humongous structure in Uhuru Park. I was privileged to have assisted and put my contribution, whatever the amount, towards that. I was in charge of the pastoralist legal program at Public Law Institute, and I had the advantage to crisscross the country to engage communities regarding matters of land tenure, natural resources, and indigenous land rights. And this should be obvious that relate or would relate approximately to the docket of Ministry of Environment and Forestry, should I get your approval. From 1993, I left PLI to establish a private law firm based in Kajiado and simultaneously Nairobi, and practice in that law firm until 2005. My practice majored mainly on land, complex land cases, environmental cases, and constitutional matters. I, as an advocate in private practice, undertook landmark litigation that settled certain jurisprudence then that became later on incorporated in our new constitution. I also, during this time, worked very closely with indigenous communities, both here locally and civil society organizations representing the interests of indigenous communities, engage with a network of parliamentarians, lawyers, and opinion shapers within the East African region to establish a network for indigenous land rights. Again, this will be relevant shortly, will be apparent when we discuss certain issues that affect the docket of the ministry that I proposed to join. Now, I forgot to mention, Chair, that during my master's, I majored mainly on corporate law and finance and securities regulations. Now, in retrospect, and this would be very important, Mr. Chairman, again, if approved, for this docket. And the issue about mobilizing resources for environmental protection and biodiversity conservation. There is over-reliance, I must say, Mr. Chairman, on donor funding. And I quickly skimmed through the budget of the ministry, and I saw that between 40 and 44% of the budget was through grants from donors, or rather, development partners. Nothing wrong with that. But then again, we as a country have our own, we have a primary responsibility to mobilize our own internal resources. And I think my knowledge in securities regulation, financial markets, will come in handy in mobilizing, working closely with private enterprise, businesses. We are transiting into a green economy, where corporations now are adopting green technologies moving into circular economy practices. So, and the funding really, now there's a huge potential. I am aware that already the Nairobi Securities Exchange, now as it is called, and other financial institutions have mobilized resources for green bonds. In other words, Mr. Chairman, my vision, and I think this, the relevancy of this is that far apart from direct allocations from government and grants from our benefactors, which at times, and I must say this, and I think it will be apparent shortly, sometimes come with conditionalities and subject at times to what commonly we call environmental diplomacy in politics. Just shortly, I think a couple of weeks ago, as you would know, honorable members would know, the European Union suspended a huge grant for the program for restoration of water towers in 11 counties, primarily because of issues surrounding the Senguer community in Embobut Forest. So it does tell me this, that it is important to look at alternatives. That, in my view, Mr. Chairman, sorry, moving forward, in 1999, and arising out of my engagements and activities as a land lawyer and an expert in native title and indigenous land rights, I was appointed by President Moy to join the Njonjo Land Commission on land laws. And this commission delivered a report and was wound up in 2002. And that report, Mr. Chairman, addresses critical issues of land. But land is just a subsector of environment. So within it, we dealt with huge issues to do with natural resource management, exploitation. And I worked with that commission and contributed my knowledge and skills. I would go back again just so that, Mr. Chairman, without boring you and the members, that in my LLB thesis, I wrote on land and produced a seminal dissertation on land and group ranches in pastoralist areas. And this thesis has been cited in court cases, has been cited in learned papers and publications. In 2000, Chairman, I was also privileged to be appointed as a commissioner in the Constitutional Reform Review Commission, popularly known as the Guy Commission. And that process produced, as you would know, what ultimately was rejected by Kenyans in 2005 as the WACO draft. But the substance of it really, Chairman, incorporated in the new constitution promulgated in 2010. I was there until 2005 when that commission was wound up. In 2005, Mr. Chairman, I was again privileged to be appointed by President Kibaki to be Director of Public Prosecution. Under the old constitutional framework. At that time, the DPP was under the Attorney General and headed the Department of Public Prosecutions. And I handled that docket, gave my energies and intellectual resource, and assisted the Attorney General to reform the department until 2011, when, under the new constitution, I was appointed as the founding director, the founding director of public prosecutions under the new constitution. And that is a job that I held until the 5th of January of this year, Chairman, when His Excellency the President granted me the high privilege of requesting me to join him and the rest of the eminent and quite able team to assist him deliver on his legacy project. I'm extremely grateful to His Excellency the President for the high honor and trust and confidence, and I hope that if approved by your August House, I will give it all to ensure that we assist the President to deliver on his legacy, on the Big Four, and also to ensure that this country, as he leaves office, is far better than when he took office, and to serve the people of. So Chairman, and just so that quickly, my interaction with the environment during as DPP, I worked very closely with environmental concerns, environmental agencies, in particular the NEMA and KFS. I gazetted their prosecutors, because who in the environmental aspect would prosecute environmental infractions, and in forestry likewise. I also worked very closely with KWS and the wildlife conservation docket. I established for thematic unit within the department, with the office. Thematic specialized division, land and environment, as well as wildlife crimes prosecution unit. And this unit, as Mr. Chairman, I'm proud to say, increase the conviction rate in relation to wildlife crimes from 38% to 74%, sorry, pardon me, Chairman, and contributed significantly to the reduction of wildlife crimes. I also established, Mr. Chairman, a division on international cooperation and mutual legal assistance. Now, this, for obvious reasons, crime is no longer, especially transborder transnational crime, whether we are dealing with money laundering, terrorism, and trafficking in arms, wildlife, all are transnational, and so this crime is no longer. So international cooperation is absolutely important, and that was the sense that prevailed upon me to establish that. Now, I'm saying this, Chairman, because it's going to be extremely relevant to environment and forestry. As all of us know, Kenya is the environmental capital of the world. hosting UNEP and UN Habitat. But besides that, Kenya has ratified a whole range of international conventions and treaties touching on environment, biodiversity conservation, forestry, about the whole range of it, about over 50 of them. About 20 or so of them active. So environment by its nature is all pervasive. It has no boundaries. And my knowledge in international cooperation, in multilateral agreements, engagement aspects will come in handy. Again, Mr. Chairman and honorable members, if I'm approved by you. So what am I saying, Chairman? Then I'm saying this, I have the academic qualifications. There was the issue, Chairman, about, let me just shortly say about the environment. Environment is as much science as it is about law. In fact, we have an entire chapter of our Constitution dedicated to environment. We have a whole sectoral copy of sectoral laws dealing with environment, regulations, treaties and conventions. There cannot be a better person to take that ministry to the next level than a lawyer. I say this and I must put on record, and I must commend the current CS, Professor Judy Wakungu. In terms of the legislative, the legal framework, she has already put it in place. In terms of policies, in terms of sessional papers, strategy papers, all is in place. From all aspects of environment and biodiversity management and conservation. So for me, Chairman, it's to implement. And implement requires enforcement. I say this, Mr. Chairman, because there is empirical evidence that 90% of climate change, 90% of climate change, and I will be discussing that in due course, is as a result of human activity. And we must therefore, Chairman, deal with the human being, the greed. God created earth and put human being to enjoy, manage, and protect. But due to greed and expansion, human being is destroying the environment, and that has to be the lawyer to stop that human being from that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very well, that is fairly detailed, and I'm sure members will find it easy then to file questions for you to respond with regard to the various issues that you've touched on. There can never be a point of order when I'm the one speaking. You must be the one out of order. Unless you want to go for further induction workshop. Mr. Tobiko, we in this process are largely guided by the provisions of Section 6, subsection 9 of the Public And of course, what is contained also in Section 7 of the said Act, I'm sure you are familiar with it. Now, in keeping with what is the requirements of that Act, we did put an advertisement in the newspapers and asking the public to informing the public, first of all, that we have received the names of the various persons from the President, and therefore asking the public to make comments in support or otherwise of the various nominees, including yourself. The way that those comments are supposed to be made, or the kind of communication that the public is required to make to this committee, is by way of sworn affidavits, such that any other form of communication with this committee outside of the provisions of the law do not count. In that regard, we as a committee did receive one affidavit from one member of public somebody by name Elizabeth Wamboi Kamicha of Thika, some address in Thika in the Republic of Kenya. And in keeping with our rules, the Secretariat was required and did indeed communicate to you, forward to you that affidavit, so that you could make a reply. It is my assumption that every member has a copy of that affidavit in their folders, and the reply thereto from Mr. Tobiko. And so that we can go to discuss the other issues which touch on the docket, would want you, Mr. Tobiko, to briefly, I believe that every other member has looked at that, at your reply, and the affidavit by that Elizabeth, the lady Elizabeth. But would want, for the benefit of the public and everybody who is involved in this process, to give us your version of. You can look at the issues that have been raised by the said Elizabeth Wambui, and then give us your oral response, so that everybody knows that this is what was being raised, and you can put the matter into proper perspective. And when you see this yellow light go on, it's the case that you have a balance of 3 minutes. So that when this the red one goes on, it shows that you have a balance of 30 seconds. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, honourable members. Yes, indeed, I was served with the affidavit sworn by one Elizabeth Wamboi Kamincha. Let me say this for the record. She was perfectly entitled, and I don't begrudge her for filing. It is due process. It's part of public participation, and she was perfectly entitled, as I suppose any other person entitled to file whatever she felt to be aggrieved by. Now, she raises a question about a case or two cases before the Thika court. One where she was charged with an offense of malicious damage to property. And from what I'm gathering now, because I inquired, she went through the trial and was acquitted. Now, that case was the police file was processed. DPP is represented in all the counties. We have county offices, and I believe honorable members know, in all your respective counties, even court stations. We have officers there, and they have functional autonomy. It is not every case. You would imagine that the DPP would not do anything else. So in regard to the file regarding that matter, that file was processed by the officer in charge of ODPP Thika. And he or she made a decision based on the assessment of the evidence and in terms of the legal requirement, and decided there was sufficient basis to charge. There was no reference, and in fact there was no requirement for a reference to me as the DPP or the head office for that matter. So that case goes. Then she says that notwithstanding her acquittal in the first case, another case was brought upon against her, again before the Thika court, where she's being charged, and I think it's a case that is ongoing. She's being charged with obtaining title by false pretenses. Again, Chair, that file, the police file, was processed, decision made to charge by our Thika office, the officer in charge of the Thika office. There was no prior reference, there was no direction from me personally or the head office. And there was no need for that anyway, because county offices have their own functional autonomies. And there was no complaint made to me, because we receive complaints about decisions made by our subordinates. And we would call for file to satisfy ourselves to do quality assurances. There was no complaint made to me about this. So I'm hearing about this complaint for the first time here during mine. And finally, Mr. Chairman, it is understandable. Anyone who is charged must be aggrieved, or should be aggrieved, by a decision to charge. But there is a mechanism provided for by the Constitution. And that mechanism is, if you are dissatisfied with the decision of the DPP to charge you, the appropriate forum is the court of law, because decisions of the DPP are not final, and they are amenable to judicial review. In the affidavit that I mentioned about here, Chair, there is no indication at all that the complainant here at all challenge the decision to charge her in the second case. So with respect and tremendous respect, yes, she's entitled to, but I think, and I verily believe, Chair, that her complaint against me has no substance. Thank you, Chair.
Now, the member for Mumias. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Sorry, I came in when you were speaking. I didn't intend to. But during the submission, our nominee sort of mentioned that he had a story after the River High School and also Kanyakine. I don't know whether it didn't come out quite clearly whether the story was included in the submission. And that's what I had wondered, that you interject so that you can tell us the story.
No. You are at liberty to ask him to give the story, only subject to brevity. So we have to first of all clear this issue of this affidavit. It's important before we go to the other matters to know that there was this affidavit by this lady, and we have received Mr. Tobiko's reply, but it was important for the public to know what was the complaint, and like he has just explained, and the reply. So I think maybe we could clear with this, and we can move to the other issues, including the stories. Yeah, if members are more inclined to the stories than other things.
Thank you, Chair, and I want to congratulate you for your nomination. I must say that listening to you and looking at your documentation, that you have the necessary requirement in terms of experience, training, and intellect in leading the position that you have been nominated for by the President. But on the other hand, you have been dogged by a chain of accusations, some minor maybe, but others that have seriously impeached on your integrity. And the claims were also raised during your vetting for the DPP office. One is left with the impression that you have a dark side. So could you explain to us and maybe shed light on why you have been deviled by these accusations of integrity, and perhaps give us a picture on that. The second element that I wanted to raise with you is your performance at the DPP and how you rate your tenure. I represent a constituency that has been seriously affected by violent crime and terrorism. I was seriously injured, and several of my constituents were killed in a terrorist attack. I see that the police have been arresting hundreds of people in Nairobi and outside Nairobi on suspicion of abetting, planning, or carrying out terrorist attacks. I want to know how many of these people have been charged by the department of your department, the DPP, and have been successfully prosecuted and found guilty. Because our rate, as far as I'm concerned as a victim of crime, I feel that the level of prosecution and successful execution of cases in our country is very poor, particularly in the period where we have had this rise in attacks from 2013. Thanks.
Let's turn now to this other side. Leader of majority.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Chair. And at the onset, Chairman, I think in line with the appointment committee's terms of reference, we need to question the nominee on that docket. But I'm sure he is at liberty to answer questions on the past. Honorable Tobiko, I want to congratulate you and thank the President for nominating you. And at least I want to confirm that I participated in your vetting the 10th Parliament as the first holder of the office of the DPP. I have two questions. And the first one, as a nominee for environment, and in line with Article 70 of the Constitution, enforcement of environmental rights. And this is what the people of Kenya enjoy under the new Constitution. And if I read for you in Section 1 of that Article 70 says if a person alleges that a right to a clean and healthy environment recognized and is protected under Article 42 has been and is being or is likely to be denied, violated, infringed, or threatened, the person may apply to a court for redress in addition to any other legal remedies that are available in respect to the same matter. And at the far end of that article, it insulates even that person. It says, for the purpose of this article, the applicant does not have to demonstrate that any person has incurred loss or suffered injury. We are victims, in urban centers, we are victims of garbage due to the poor leadership of the county governors we have. If you go to our slums, sewage is everywhere, garbage is not collected. The innocent Kenyans suffer because of environmental pollution. And this is a provision in the Constitution. I mean, if you go to Madare today, if you go to, you have seen what's happening in Mombasa, the many environmental diseases that is happening due to failure in leadership. What is it that you as a minister will do that to make sure that those who have been given the responsibility to provide a clean, safe, habitual environment, you know, enjoy it? The middle class, the affluent part of the society, they have their ways of cleaning the environment. But what about the poor Kenyans? How do we enforce Section 70, Article 70 of the Constitution to make sure that county government and county leadership and those of us who are bestowed and given the resources to give our people a safe environment do? Number two, and finally, the National Environmental Tribunal is under your docket. It is established under Section 125 and Part 6 of the MCA Act number 9 of 1999. And the function of that tribunal is to hear and make determination arising from decisions that NEMA has taken. But in the last 3 years, the tribunal, the National Environmental Tribunal has become another law into itself. It's riddled with corruption. They don't listen to cases, the appeal cases, efficiently and in good time. And in most cases, because they have the powers, in most cases, they're involved in corruption. And ultimately, the economy suffers because private entity developers, serious businesses are stopped for 5 years, for 2 years, for 3 years, because this tribunal does not want to make a decision. How do you want to clean the National Environmental Tribunal? I mean, it's a key institution under your docket. Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Chair.
A member for, no, those are men. Member for Muranga.
Thank you, Chair, for being gender sensitive. And first and foremost, I want to congratulate Kiraiko Tobiko. And listening to his CV, I also want to congratulate him for being top. I've seen in high school, at the university, and I'm hoping the way he performed then, he'll still perform the same. The ministry is going to, the ministry that once was managed by the late Mishuki, who happened to be from my county. And we do remember Mishuki for cleaning up Nairobi River. My question is, what would you be remembered for? And on this, I want to allude one on the issue of water. In my county, we already have the North Collector Tunnel. There were issues about environment and the environmental impact that were raised. The project is ongoing. How will you assure the people of Muranga that you will follow up on the environmental impact on the northern corrector, and bearing in mind that Mishuki once opposed that project. Secondly, in your opinion, because you'll be dealing with the natural resources, do you think water is part of the natural resources? And if yes, we've seen counties that give minerals, they are compensated, there is some percentage that is given to the community on their resources, mainly the minerals. Do you, what is your opinion about the counties that give water? And again, I'll go back to my county, Muranga, that our resource that we have is water. But basically, the county gains nothing from providing water to the country. What is your opinion on the same? And last, I want to go to where Honorable Dwale dealt with the issue of garbage. These have been great environmental pollution in our city, and mainly there is one proposed dump site to be constructed in Muranga County. People are not, the public participation was not done. What would you do as a new CS to make sure that the public participation is done and the interest of the people, and especially on pollution, is taken care of before dump sites are constructed in counties? What is your plan for recycling garbage in this country? Because we have actually a big problem. Anyway, maybe you'd work with the county governments, but I'll leave that to you. Thank you very much.
Well, let him respond to those three first. Over.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, members. Honorable Washiali, the story was simple. That I did not qualify in my Standard 7 to get admitted to a public secondary school. I went to a private school. That did not stop me from getting a second division in secondary school and being the top in the country in high school, being top in my class. Point is, I don't let one failure determine my next step. That's the story. Now, Honorable Yusuf, yes, you raise about integrity accusations bedeviling me. So, Chairman, our public service has become a graveyard for public servants. And I can say this, Mr. Chairman, and virtually each one of us who has served or who is going to serve in public service will be bedeviled by accusations left, right, and center. That has become the nature of our society. Allegations, accusations, innuendos, rumors, and no one ever takes the trouble to authenticate. And I would have imagined, Chair, that if all these allegations are there and those who have them feel that they are substantial, credible, and supported by evidence, they would have filed affidavits here, so that I confront them as I did in 2011. So, Mr. Chairman, yes. Let me tell you also about the nature of the job of DPP. You already know, of course. It's not a very solemn docket. It's not a very happy docket where everyone would be happy with your decisions. Every decision that DPP makes, for sure, there is going to be a person crying. Or sometimes all parties will be crying. And the easiest way to impugn a decision of an independent office holder is to insinuate, to throw allegations right, left, and center. My record speaks for itself. My integrity is and impugn in spite of those allegations. And yes, you can say them correctly. You describe them for what they are, allegations. But there are allegations flying right and center, but no one comes out, has the audacity then to come and prove them. That is the nature. That is what we will call in public. That is the occupational hazard. That's the occupational hazard that we who have served and are serving and will serve will have to deal with. Regarding my record as the founding director of DPP speaks for itself. I can go into great length, Chairman, but I can say this, and just very quickly. When I got delinked from the Office of the Attorney General on June 2011, I only had 90 prosecutors in the country. Police used to prosecute nearly 95% of the cases, and I'm sure honorable members of the committee know, because at one point or the other. As we, and Honorable Washeli and many others have had to go through certain of being prosecuted by, and I say they are very hardworking police prosecutors, very competent, but there are also a lot that were. As we speak, as I left that office, Mr. Chairman, nearly 1,000 prosecutors, professional prosecutors, who are serving in each and every court in this, including in the remotest of places. When I got appointed in 2011, Mr. Chairman, I had 13 field offices. Field offices. As we speak now, Mr. Chairman, ODPP has completely full-fledged offices in each and every county. Each and every county. I can say this without any fear of contradiction, Mr. Chairman. If there is a department or an office of government that has decentralized its services more than ODPP, I challenge you to come out. In terms of professionalization, we phased out police prosecutors. That office is now being run by the most competent lot who have special skills and competencies, who are taken as resource persons internationally. And therefore, Chairman, and I said this, in regard as a founding director of that, I leave that office proud. I have left that office with a firm and strong foundation. It is not easy to craft an institution from nothing. And whoever comes in, lady or gentleman, would, as I find myself now, taking over from, if I'm approved, of course, a firm foundation laid. Regarding our conviction rate, and we, by the way, Chair, and I saw members know, we file annual reports before you, because of course we are independent, but we are subject to parliamentary oversight. The law, the Constitution, and the law empowers this House, the National Assembly, and the Senate to ask the DPP to make a report of any particular matter, and the DPP is obliged as part of oversight and as part of good governance. We have filed reports, and these reports show in great detail the conviction rate. We started at a very low rate, and I would say, just if I may, summarize the rate in terms of violent crimes. Around 47, 48%. Violent crimes now, our conviction rate is between 70 and 75 or 78%. And I could give details about these and as I mentioned, in wildlife crimes, about 74%. So our conviction rate has tremendously increased, and there is evidence, tangible evidence, to prove that. Honorable Duale, you raise a very important issue in terms of enforcement of environmental rights. The reason why, and I mentioned earlier about the Wangari Maathai case against Uhuru Park and the construction of the humongous building. That case was dismissed, struck on a technicality, locus standi. Right? What locus standi, and which means is you must be able to show, to demonstrate a damage or loss directly that would accrue to you as an individual in order to sustain a case. Now, that completely compromised public interest litigation. And it was for that reason, Chair, that that requirement of the rule of locus standi was done in regard to environmental litigation, and also as regards, also to some extent, enforcement of fundamental human rights. Now, failure by counties or some counties to discharge their functions in terms of solid waste management generally, it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem, Mr. Chairman. I do not want to say any particular, but I think the point here is, and the difficulty here was that Schedule 4 of the Constitution devolved waste management and air, water pollution and water and sanitation to counties, noise pollution to counties. But unlike in other aspects, there was no transitional period. As you notice that in some of the, a period of a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years was prescribed. In regard to these, there was no provision for transition. So counties assumed that responsibility. Of course, they are required to implement specific national policies. These policies are in place. The issue here, Mr. Chairman, is one, and the ministry had, and I think the Transition Authority had jointly had prepared, and along with the Council of Governors, prepared transitional implementation plans, tips. But even then, only a few of those counties have done so. The point here is, do these counties have the capacity in terms of knowledge, in terms of resources, in terms of skills and competencies? That's one question. But more critically, do they have the appropriate leadership and political leadership and political will to do their job? It is a matter, as we speak now, Mr. Chairman, we are now dealing presently as a ministry, oh sorry, I'm not yet there, the ministry. A draft bill, the waste management bill, and I believe, and also a policy, and I believe it would soon come to you, to this August House, right? Which in very specific imposes legal obligation on county leadership and county governments to discharge their responsibility. I think if approved, that would be one of my immediate matters to follow up. Now, I know, Chair, that in fact NEMA, not too long ago, had again, because of frustration, had to take to court Mombasa County government, Nairobi County government. This is on record, so I'm not something I'm creating about. This is for failure to do this. And the judges say, it looks very messy. One government institution taking the other governmental institute to court. Why can't you sort out this? I think, if approved, Mr. Chairman, I will immediately engage counties, both collectively and bilaterally. I will work very, very, very closely with the Council of Governors. I understand there was a sectoral committee within the COG. I do not know whether it's fully operational, to ensure, because waste management has a huge effect on our environment, releasing of hazardous gases and waste into the rivers, and so to answer you, yes, it is a main issue which I have tagged and prioritized if I get your approval, Chair. On the issue of the environmental tribunal, again, Honorable Duale, you make a very valid point. During my preparation for this exercise, I interacted with the officials, including the current CS. And the frustration is obvious. This tribunal is not operating. Issues about composition, who appoints, and my understanding of this is, the Act creates a tribunal. The Constitution says that every tribunal, a tribunal then is the Judicial Service Commission that has the responsibility to populate it. Now that then becomes, but then it is the minister to gazette. So you have this extremely awkward situation where it is the Judicial Service Commission that is supposed to populate it, but it is the CS to gazette. And I know here, without going into it, that there is a problem now, and I don't have the full facts, but of course, stoppage orders. I hear the frustration of stoppage orders. Stoppage orders being granted willy-nilly. Massive infrastructural projects are stayed. It's like, and I have tremendous respect for those members of the tribunal. But I think, Chair, and I say this, without going into the merits of any particular matter, but I think decisions of judicial bodies must take into account the context, the public interest consideration, and therefore, without saying more, because again I am disadvantaged, I will make it a priority topic, because a lot of development, even private development projects, public development projects, massive government projects have stalled, delayed because of this, and it is a huge. The Constitution says that cases must be disposed of expeditiously, and this constitutional requirement applies in equal measure to this tribunal, and I will take it as one of their priority. Yes, Honorable Sabina Chege, again, Michuki. It is a name that when all of us, Honorable Michuki made the Environment Ministry what all of us remember about. In terms of cleaning of the Nairobi River, and this is one of my priority topics, the cleanup restoration. There is already activity going on. Ministry, there's a directorate there in the ministry. There is the county government of Nairobi is doing some things, but we need to mobilize. We need to mobilize massive. In how Michuki manages, he brought in the huge political goodwill. He brought his personality and gravitas and toughness. And I will borrow as much as I can measure from Michuki. It's cleaning up, a restoration of Nairobi River is a priority, and not just Nairobi River. There are other rivers under the urban rivers program. There are about 10 or so. I intend to give this a priority because having a clean water and the president's agenda on affordable healthcare, universal healthcare, would be seriously undermined if our water sources are contaminated, the waterborne diseases, uncollected garbage, toxic. So it is a huge matter. And on your other issue, so the question about water, yes, water is health. And this country requires water. It requires water for drinking. It requires water for irrigation. It requires water to sustain the environment. But the water projects must be counterbalanced. It's sustainable development. Sustainable development. The imperatives of development. We must develop. We need these water resources. But then at what cost? And that is an actual science. We have professors and experts in the field, and there is due process to be followed. So again, in regard to the dam you mentioned about, I don't have as yet the full details, as I don't have regarding other dams, but it is a matter of importance that development infrastructure must take into account environmental and so that we're not just talking about the environmental impact assessment. We should go beyond that to talk about social impact assessment. We should even go beyond that to speak about strategic impact. We must be able to calculate that because what may be sustainable now in the next 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. So, and this is a matter of that I intend, again, within, of course, established government policies and decision-making processes to public participation. Dam sites. I am very proud of myself. Yes, Kajiado is a model county. Kajiado, my county, and I'm proud about it. Coming up with a model. It's no longer called a dam site. A dam site has a very derogatory connotations. It's called engineered landfills, and those who collect the waste are not called pickers. They're called waste entrepreneurs because it's big business. It's a recycling. So that is a matter that again is top on my agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Very well. I think we should be preparing to wind down. So, Mr. Tobiko, you will take. But please, everyone, one question, because we don't want to. No, not about age. We will now, because all of you have your hands up. We start with the Deputy Speaker, and then I will show you how it will go.
Yes, I want to, Chair, congratulate Tobiko for being nominated. Now, and I've been struggling because his resume or CV is very heavy with a lot of accolades. You know, to get a first class is not easy for us who are lawyers. We also know that even the kind of experience that he has got over time is also very, very heavy. Now, but I'm also struggling at the same time to understand why Mr. Tobiko is changing course close to the exit to the lake, because it's like a big river changing course, really, because I've tried to look for that particular strength that touches on environment in his resume and even in his what he has given before us this morning, and I can't find it other than, of course, the issue of prosecutorial strength to wildlife and forest. And of course, I understand also that he is getting into a ministry which the previous holder, and this is my own personal opinion, did not give much to it. So that as you, of course, as you try and get and pick some things, that's why you hear people talking about Michuki, and there have been other holders thereafter. So you don't pick too much from the ones who came after that, because really, other than Michuki. So what I'm just asking is, really, you had a year to go with the DPPs as a holder of, as a prosecutor. Now, what is it that, do you really think this is the right avenue you are taking to the next level? Because if I were asked, if I were you, is probably be thinking of progressing in the direction you are taking. Because even in the DPP, really, for some of us who interacted with you, I was in the administration JLAC committee in last parliament, and you did very well. So I would have been thinking that you would be proceeding in that particular direction, even going higher. I'm not saying this one you are getting into is not high, it's very high, but high in a different direction. I do not know, therefore, whether it is something you are comfortable with, or it's just a pastoralist and pastoralism getting some pasture. Really, it is something that I've really been struggling. No, I'm just asking, take that one lightly, because I know you personally, and really, you worked very well in DPP's department. You did very well. In fact, the reforms maybe many Kenyans may not know, because you also don't speak too much, trying to highlight the things you did. But for some of us who looked at what you did, we are proud of that. But this one you are going to, you know, it needs, I don't want to use the word a crude minister who can be able to bring back things to the way they are, because this is probably the most important ministry. You know, you are talking about cancer coming out of bad environment. You are talking about everything getting, you know, towards that particular ministry. So I really want you to speak to that.
Close to you, Baride. Don't worry, members. We have said everybody is going to, so you don't even need to raise your hand up. I know the ones who have asked questions, so you can relax.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mine will be very brief, and I want to congratulate you on your nomination. And I want to ask you about the ban on plastic paper, plastic bags. We know that your predecessor, if you get this position, really put her foot down and banned the plastic bags. And we are seeing efforts, especially by the manufacturers, to really take us back to those plastic bags that have choked our environment. And as Kenyans, we were very excited because it gave room for other forms of carrying our goods and wares from the markets, the kiondo that the women would benefit from. And we are actually looking, we were waiting for the next level, that is banning of plastic bottles and cans. So I want to hear from where you sit. Do we expect more gains in that effort, or are we going to roll back the gains that have already been achieved?
Member for Kikuyu.
Thank you, Chair and Speaker. Mention is basically more of a follow-up to what the Honorable Sabina had asked on the Michuki magic. I am yet, and I just want you, in very few words, CS nominee, to tell this committee what is that Michuki moment for you. Michuki moment was on Nairobi River. Today, properties fronting Nairobi River are the least in value. In other capital cities in the world, properties that front a river like that flowing through a capital city like this are the most valuable. What will be your Michuki moment? At least 3 things that you intend to achieve in your first 100 days in office. And I think it's the same thing the Deputy Speaker is speaking about in terms of your progression from the office of DPP and the line that you are taken in the law profession to now a totally different uncharted waters for you. What can convince this committee, Speaker, with your permission to use a term that has been used before, not to be a cabinet secretary wa kizungu mingi, but a practical cabinet secretary who can deliver on the issues that we are confronted with matters environment. 2, Chair, if you allow me, the question of potential areas of conflicts of interest. Coming from the Ma community, we have had a long-running issue of the Mau forest settlement area in the Rift. Do you see this as a potential area of conflict, conflict of interest, having come from the Ma community and the sensitivity of the Ma question and issues to do with the environment in the Ma area, in the Mau area, Mau forest area? And of course other areas, not just Mau, the other areas where there's potential conflict of communities.
Well, but members, I have a way of even snapping you if you take too long also in asking questions. Member for Kitui South, Rachel Nyamai.
Thank you, Chairman. Let me congratulate you first for being nominated. I have a question regarding funding. You told us that 44% of funding in the ministry that if you are approved that you'll be going to is donor funded. Are you aware that in the ministry there is a problem of management of funding, both GOK and also from the donors, and that there is a problem, a push and pull between the ministry itself and with the SAGAs, the semi-autonomous institutions that are under the ministry? How are you going to deal with this? And I would also ask, how are you going to deal with the hospital waste? Because this is a matter that will require you to connect your office and also the Ministry of Health, because hospital waste is becoming a serious problem in the country. Thank you, Chair.
Member for Kitutu Church and North.
Thank you, Chair, and I congratulate you, Mr. Tobiko, for having been nominated to that great position. I'm sure, I'm confident you deliver in that community if you go with the commitment you have shown at TBP. Mr. Tobiko, the relationship between water supply and the environment cannot be gainsaid. Households around the country are seeking water. They don't have water, adequate water. We seem to be on the journey that the Cape Town has taken in South Africa, whereby we may get to a point where there will be no water at all, especially where I come from in Kisi. Kisi used to have a lot of water, a lot of streams, but people planted their gum trees along the riversides. People build houses by the riverside. People cleared all the trees in the hills. Are you going to implement the Michuki policy where you could not entertain, doesn't matter where that comes from, you could not entertain anybody destroying the environment, especially the river streams and the rivers? 2, Mr. Topiko, the people who destroy the industry, the environment, are mainly senior people in government, in the legislature, and other positions who cannot be pursued in the course of law. Can you use your experience when you get that ministry to make sure that regardless of the position of the person who commits destruction of environment will be pursued as the law allows. Thank you.
Member for Taita Taveta County, Honorable Muzigi.
Well, it's okay now. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I also want to take this opportunity to congratulate the nominee, Mr. Kariako Tobiko, and for a very good CV as well. And my question to you is this. Minerals exploration is really gaining ground in the country. And as we know, we have so many minerals in the national parks and also the reserves. Even in Taita Taveta, we have the Savo, where we have so many minerals. Now, my question to you is, how are you going to handle this, given a chance to be a CS? And there's also the issue of sand harvesting in our waterways, which is really eroding our rivers and damaging our conservation. Thank you.
You take all of them, take the notes, and because when I finish, there will be no further questions. Member for Mumias East, not the stories now.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. I also want to take this opportunity to congratulate Tobiko for this nomination. And Chair, I want to admit that at one point he bailed me out when Kidero was on my neck, and I want to thank you for that. However, listening to you, you've talked passionately about matters environment, and to some extent you also talked passionately about wildlife. I wanted to ask you that as Director of Public Prosecution, how many people have you prosecuted and charged for poaching? Many times we've been banning ivory from elephants, I mean hips of ivory. But that means that there was some kind of weakness on the side of your office. Could you cite cases of people you prosecuted for this committee to gain confidence that if you became Minister for Environment, we will see a lot of improvement in terms of our protection of our animals?
Member for West Pokot County, Honorable Tommy Tom.
Thank you, Chair. And congratulations, Mr. Tobiko, for that nomination. Something to add on what my colleague, Honorable Mbarire, said, that the problem of plastic bags became an issue until the ministry implemented the ban. But another big problem that has cropped out of this is that several Kenyans, and the majority being the youth, lost their jobs. Therefore, if given this position, what alternative are you going to create for the manufacturers, the users, and the employees who lost their jobs? And finally, I want to say something about deforestation. The cutting of trees has been a problem in this nation. But again, the ministry has been making a lot of efforts in trying to curb it, and that we appreciate. But the issue here is that there is a collision between the foresters and the NEMA through corruption. Therefore, if given this particular position, what are you going to do in order to arrest this particular problem that is growing in this nation? Thank you, Chair.
Member for Nakuru Town East.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me this opportunity. And unlike Washali, who was bailed out, me on 2 occasions, I was sent in.
I'm dealing with the criminals, I think. Or suspects. There are too many who have been bailed out.
Yes, but I think he was just doing his work. And also to reiterate, Mr. Speaker, the importance of this very important clause in the appointment, the 6/9, and I think subsection 9. And I think it's important for Kenyans to be able to be given an opportunity. And then when he gave that, the replying affidavit, now I understand it's not him, it could be the Nakuru office who were in charge of that. That notwithstanding, Chair, I had an opportunity of serving in the implementation committee in the last parliament. And one of the challenges that we were trying to, when we were being confronted by environmental issues, is the capacity of NEMA at their respective offices countrywide. So I don't know what the CS, if appointed, will be able to do in terms of enforcement of the law. We have enough laws, but the enforcement from NEMA's office. And the NEMA office, every time we met them, they were telling us they didn't have the capacity because they had very few staff. So I don't know what Tobiko will do in case he's appointed regarding the enforcement of the very, very powerful laws that we have regarding environment. Secondly, energy has been, it's an enabler of the big 4 agendas of this government. And without energy, we'll not be doing manufacturing, not be able, and coal, extraction of coal and the energy that you're going to get from coal is a crucial component in driving the economic development of this country. And the predecessor in the ministry was very much against the coal in Lamu and Kitui. I don't know what the position, his position is in case he's given that opportunity regarding the coal mining. I know it has some environmental issue, and whatever was being raised by his predecessor, maybe it's to look at the issues which were raised and be able to, because again, if you don't have energy, then all the 4 agendas, Mr. Speaker, or Mr. Chairman, sorry, will not be realized. Thank you.
Before Laikipia North, Honorable Sarah Korere.
Thank you, Chair. And congratulations, Keriako Tobiko, on your nomination. Mine is a question on the human-wildlife conflict. As it is now, the human-wildlife conflict is actually almost getting out of hand. And we know that there is a bill, the Wildlife Bill of 2014, that clearly spells out the terms, the compensation of loss of life, destruction to property by wildlife. At the same time, it also gives penalties for poaching and things like that. My main concern is, how are you going to deal with a backlog of cases of human-wildlife conflict, especially death resulting from wildlife, like people being killed by elephants, buffaloes, and all sorts of wildlife that has not been compensated? And it's a huge, there are so many all over. And again, my other concern is indigenous knowledge is one aspect that has not been tapped into by conservationists, by the modern technology. While it's actually a reality that the indigenous communities have been a custodian of the indigenous forest, the wildlife, but we are seeing an erosion of the dignity of the indigenous communities at the expense of some scrupulous, if I may call them, investors. How are you going to deal with tapping the indigenous knowledge and bringing on board the communities that have been involved for a very long time in conserving the environment, the wildlife, and the other things like that? Thank you.
Member for Ainapkoi.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. Tobiko, thank you for your appointments. Your CV paints a great learned man, and you have intellectual discourse. Having said that, I want you to put it into practice. Our constitution on obligation in respect of environment, Article 69(1)(b), the state shall work to achieve and maintain a tree cover of at least 10% of the land area of Kenya. Having said that, I moved a motion in Parliament that compulsory planting of trees in all learning institutions and our households be adopted. Tobiko, I want to go straight to you. In 1963, our forest cover was 13%. Now, as I speak, it is 1.7%. And rye ply is a classical and a practical example. They have harvested all our trees without having replanting program or corporate social responsibility. What measures are you going to put in place to make sure that those exploiters return our revenue? You know very well, I called him in December. He told me he's enjoying in Toronto. And he came from India without anything. Anyway, having said that, Kenya forest cover continues to be depleted through logging and the shamba system. Being the new CS, a one forest cover and all illegal logging that is carried out with the knowledge and collusion of foresters be addressed. Thank you, Chair, and God bless you. Thank you.
Member for Pokot South.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me this opportunity. And congratulations also to Tobiko for getting the position or being nominated. Number one is really, Tobiko, and be honest to yourself and us and the people of Kenya. Somebody, I looked at your resume and all these things and your paperwork. From 2005 up to today, you have been in public law. I also looked at your net worth. You are not a bad man. You're almost close to $500 million. So you're not desperate for a job. But really, Tobiko, do you think you're in a right job now? Or do you think you should change, to be honest? You know, and maybe become a AG, or Minister for Legal Affairs, or even minimum lands. Are you really in the right place? And secondly, in increasing forest cover, Tobiko, do you think you want to impose new measures and technologies? For example, bamboo planting, like what happens in South America. And I'm talking about where I come from, or where I'm an MP, which is Pokot South. Some people think that Pokot is as Turkana, but it is not. It's one of the coldest places. They have some of the coldest places in this country. And maybe to increase that forest cover, don't you think you want to come up with new things like bamboo? Because bamboo has two things. It can increase our forest cover, but again, it can also promote economy of the people. So there's something motivating Kenyans to go the bamboo way because of the cottage industry and something like that. But again, you will also achieve increasing the forest cover of this country. Don't you think you'll come up with those things? Or you take another ministry? Thank you, Chair.
Member for, you just mentioned that Pokot is not like Turkana at all. The member for Turkana County.
Thank you, Chair. It's time to defend myself against the Pokot. I want to start by congratulating Wakili for the nomination. And as a pastoralist, I think I need to declare that interest. Well, I want to thank the President for this nomination. We are proud of that. And I also don't mind mobility because it is part of growth. You can go to different sectors. Thank you. Now, I have only one question. Kenya's economy is based on climate vulnerable sectors. And I come from Turkana, and I know the effect of climate change on the pastoralists. So I'm looking at sectors like livestock, arable agriculture, forestry, fisheries, and many others. In fact, even industry and manufacturing are also climate vulnerable in terms of the energy needs, the power they need. Now, we have the Climate Change Act of 2016, which is meant to ensure development, management, and implementation and regulation of mechanisms to enhance climate change resilience and achieve low carbon climate development. Now, in terms of strengthening adaptation and resilience to climate change, there needs to be measures, including linking with other ministries. This is what I would like to find from you, what plans you would put in place to ensure the strengthening of adaptation and resilience to climate change. Thank you.
Nominee 001.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As Honorable Chepkut said, may God bless you, because I thought you'll forget me. And Honorable Yusuf, prepare to come back to your seat, because it seems when I'm this side, I'm nearly forgotten. First of all, congratulations, Mr. Tobiko. We are proud of you, especially for what you have done in DPP. And I hope that energy and zeal will be transferred to the Ministry of Environment, because we really need a lot of changes, especially in terms of prosecution of people who destroy our environment. Because as we know, nature is never forgiving. Once we destroy our environment, we have witnessed, especially in Narok, floods that have been a menace to us because of destruction of environment. So we really need a lot energy, zeal, and somebody who cannot be compromised, like you. And I hope you'll bring all those to this ministry if you are approved. Corruption is short of being declared as a national disaster in this country. I want you to specifically state what measures will you take in your ministry to make sure that there is no corruption. Because, as Honorable Chepkut and other members have been saying, is that logging, destruction of environment, NEMA have no capacity. It is not that they don't have capacity. It is because when they go for the culprit, they are given handouts and kickbacks. And that is corruption. We want you to fight corruption. So we want you to specifically give us 5 areas in which you will fight corruption in that ministry. Lastly, what strategy will you put in place to make sure that in environmental conservation, you have engaged our youth, women, as well as persons with disabilities? Not as an affirmative action, but we know these people are very interested with the environment. Logging have been done by mostly men, so we need women to conserve the environment. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and again, may God bless you for not forgetting me.
Finally, because of the time that he arrived, because those are the consequences that one has to face, member for Lunga Lunga, while introducing yourself, you ask one question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My apologies for coming some few minutes late. As I introduce myself, my name is Hatib Abdallah Mashetani, Member of Parliament for Lunga Lunga, and I'm Vice Chair of Lands Committee and a member of this committee. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, I had the privilege to serve in the docket of Environment and Water last Parliament, and we passed so many bills regarding water, touching on the issues to do with forestry, KWS, and we had the opportunity to review so many of them so that they can fit. But the problem is, since that time, little has been done for the implementations of the laws that we had reviewed. Secondly, Mr. Chair, the issue to do with the reclaiming of land, seaside in Mombasa, there is a whole activity that is taking place as your way you're going to the airport, where a big chunk of the sea has been reclaimed by a developer. And I have not been hearing or seeing any intervention by the ministry. What will be your take? And if that will be the case where, some measures have to be taken, we need to know what will be the recourse. After they have done it, what do we do next? Is it they are going to do to create the sea the way it was, or they are still going to continue with the project as it is? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, in the interest of time, Mr. Tobiko will give you only 15 minutes to respond to all those questions. So you will have to be brief, and because I think it shows that there is a lot of interest in wanting to know what it is that you do in the area of in the area to which you have been nominated, and it's a matter of concern to so many Kenyans indeed. So 15 minutes to respond to.
Thank you, Chair, and
questions.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry for interruption. Thank you, Chair, and honourable members. I think this does underscore the appreciation by the honourable members about how critical environment is. Environment is life. There's no life without environment. When we talk about the other subsectors, we're talking about marine resources, seas and oceans. That's environment. We're talking about air, the biosphere, the atmosphere. That is environment. We're talking about the land mass. Everything is about environment. In short, environment is about the earth, the planet that God created, and then from which we were made. So it is absolutely critical that we protect and manage and conserve it. Quickly, from Honorable Mashetani, the issue of land reclamation by a private developer in Mombasa, I don't have the full fact, but it's a matter that I will, if again approved, I will take up. The issue about non-implementation of the Act, one of the things I will do as priority topic is to quickly an audit of all the legislations. And all the legislations that have been enacted in the last parliament and before, and getting an actual implementation status, so that I am able to determine quickly what are the implementation gaps, what are the weak links, and fix them, and that I will fix them. Honorable Sankok, youth, women, persons with disabilities. Really, this is the group that is most, all of us are affected by environmental degradation and contamination, but the most vulnerable. For the youth, theirs is actually, they have the greater stakes in terms of intergenerational equity. They have a greater stake in the environment than all of us do have. Women, they bear the brunt of environmental and forestry depletion of forestry resources. Persons with disabilities. And it is important, therefore, as we discussed, just not in terms of procurement, the preferentials, preferential 30% in procurement, but we must now go beyond just in procurement, in identifying and maximizing on opportunities, and there are huge opportunities that arise, particularly as we move into the green economy. I mentioned earlier about entrepreneurs, SMEs. We must look at very seriously, and I'll be more than happy and to work with the relevant committees of this House, and also the counties, and the relevant groups, youth groups, women groups, groups of persons with disabilities, to get their suggestions and proposals on how they can be mainstreamed in this particular sector. Measures to quickly to deal with corruption in the ministry. I think the first that quickly coming to asset and wealth declarations without failure. Officers in the ministry are required by law, and those that have not filed their asset wealth declarations, action will be taken. Declaring of the gift registers, those must be open, maintained, and available. Conflict of interest registers, those must be kept and maintained. The whole issue of corruption prevention committees. I will work very, very closely with the Anti-Corruption Commission. I will invite immediately, if I am appointed, Anti-Corruption Commission to undertake systems and systems and procedural risk assessment and checks, so that they are able to advise. They are the experts. What are the risk areas? Quickly, I am thinking on my feet the issue of whistleblower mechanism, confidential whistleblower mechanism that members of the public would be able to report to me, as I believe also report to the president about incidences of corruption. Yes, need for prosecution. I can assure this panel and with the chair with you, that there are not going to be any sacred cows. No. Be it individuals, be it corporations. The law regarding protection and conservation of the environment and forestry and biodiversity will be applied ruthlessly and without exceptions. There's not going, of course, there will be respect for due process, but the law will be applied. Companies that pollute and degrade the environment must abide by and strictly be penalized. They pay, the polluter pays principles. So that enforcement will form the critical cog. Honorable Emanicor Joyce, the issue of climate change, it's a huge issue, and it cuts across all the ministries, all the subsectors. It's massive, and the statistics show that about 2.8% of our GDP is actually affected by climate change, arising out of global warming, and it's a major issue. We're already experiencing droughts, frequent and droughts. Our waters are drying up. Waters in our dams, in the aquifers are drying up because of destruction of forest. So climate change is absolutely, and what mitigation, adaptation measures, those we will, and again, because it is cross-cutting, I will, and this is important because it also affects implementation, adopt a model which we adopted in within the GJ laws, the National Council on Administration of Justice. I will propose a coordinating mechanism along the lines of Honorable Moroto. Yes, indeed, you're right. New technologies as part of adaptation and mitigation.
Speaker, I'm Honorable Kosing.
Oh, Kosit, so, sorry,
Kosing, yes.
Kosit, yes, yes, sorry. So,
for record purpose.
Yeah, Kosit, yes. Sorry, I apologize.
Yeah.
Kosit.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
PKOSING.
Sorry, I apologize. I apologize for that. I apologize for that.
TBS.
Yes, yes, sir. The issue of new technologies, absolutely, for climate adaptation and mitigation, growing of new species that can withstand the vagaries of dry weather and that are resistant to drought. Bamboo growing it's mangroves, and so this is a matter that we will take very seriously. Honorable Chepkut, yes, I fully associate myself with your sentiment, and I look very much forward to working with you as we refine. I would very much, if again approved, looking into the draft bill that you propose and see that how we can enrich it with our compulsory tree growing. There was a program on the Green Schools program launched by the president in 2013, huge amounts of money, and I would want to know exactly what became of that program, because I think it fits in fairly well within what you propose. Honorable Correre, yes, indigenous knowledge, cultural intellectual property, the medicinal knowledge, and it's very important to be harnessed, documented, and then value added. Human-wildlife conflict. Wildlife has now been taken out to the ministry, but again there are interfaces, because there are wildlife everywhere within the environment, in the forest, within the waters, and we will work very closely with the Ministry of Tourism and Wildlife. Honorable Gikaria, yes, coal mining and energy demand. I know of the project, but I have not, again, because not yet there, been able to receive the full docket to understand in full exactly what has transpired regarding this project. But I would want to assume that a project of this nature must have undergone the requisite environmental impact assessment, and I would also assume that a project of this magnitude would have been discussed at the levels, and I perfectly would understand where the current CS comes from, but I would imagine that if that a mechanism is created within government, where if you have a divergent opinion regarding a matter, you place it on record before cabinet. It is interrogated by your colleagues, expert knowledge obtained, and if the position of government is that, then you are bound by that decision. And if you disagree, your choice is to recuse yourself from the docket. You cannot, in tremendous respect, on the one hand. But again, I am disadvantaged by the lack of. But it's a matter that I will follow up. Capacity of NEMA and enforcement. Yes, again, I'll do an audit of NEMA and its performance, as well as the other sagas falling within the ministry. Honorable Washali poaching, I said 74% conviction rates. Number of cases in court, convictions of the huge cartels have taken place in Mombasa, and I can give you the details. The Honorable Mizingi, yes, Mizigi. Mineral exploitation in parks and reserves, and yes, again, this is balancing the competing interest. Again, I don't have the specifics, and I would need the specifics to be able to. Honorable Angwenyi, water is life, as I say. If there are any people, however senior, who are responsible, the law will take its course. No one will be above the law regarding this. Honorable Mbarire, the issue of ban of plastic bags. The indication I have now is that the success rate is about 80%. But again, there are issues here about plastic bags sneaking in or being sneaked in from neighboring countries. Again, that is a matter that I will have to inquire, and surveillance and monitoring. And plastic bottles, and again, that is a discussion ongoing with the Kenya Manufacturers Association, and I think once, if I'm in, I will know the Ichungwa and all those members who spoke about Honorable Ichungwa. Yes, this is for me. I have been behind closed doors, in my office, in court, with very minimal ground interaction. This offers me, if I am appointed, the greatest opportunity to get out and be visible, and not just in terms of optics, actually, in terms of actual work. Honorable Ichung'wah, the Michuki magic, climate change, solid waste management, and cleaning up of our urban rivers. I want our cities, and again, for Kenya to be truly an environmental capital, we must have green and clean cities. The water towers, we cannot manage all these issues we're talking about, climate change, unless we protect our water towers with our lives. Is there any likely conflict of interest between us because of the community I belong? No, there shouldn't. I am not there to serve a community. I am there to serve the entire country. And I will make decisions based on facts, evidence, empirical evidence. And I see absolutely no ground for conflict. I think, Mr. Chairman, unless I have yes, unless I have forgotten. Sorry. Yes.
The one raised by the Honorable Cheboy and the Honorable Kosing.
Yes, yes. About whether I am comfortable with this ministry, and I should probably have thought about other line upward mobility. That I say I have been in those line ministries for too long. It will now about 12, 13 years. It's time to change course. And I think there is very good wisdom on the part of His Excellency the President in identifying me for these. There must be, and surely there is something that he saw in me. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Tobiko, for first of all being available and to explain to us some of the issues that have been raised, and also some of the very critical matters to do with the docket to which you've been nominated. I think the committee will be retreating later tonight to go and consider these responses, and possibly by early next week you'll be able to hear what the members will decide. Otherwise, we thank you very much. Unless you have something to say as a way of parting shot, would be glad to release you.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, let me again extend my gratitude and appreciation to you, Mr. Chairman, and the eminent members of this committee. I'm quite privileged. And whatever your views, the questions, if approved, I have tagged them for action. And I promise you this, that I will be available to engage with you, Chairman and Speaker, the leader of the majority and other leaders of the party, to work with the House and the party to ensure that the President's legacy is delivered and the Jubilee Manifesto achieved. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very well.
Okay. Full designation. Now what? No.
I'm a former too.
Former.
DPP.
Now, honourable members, there is a proposal that looking at your faces and the way you are walking in and out of this hall, it's like you'd want to stretch your legs, possibly imbibe some bottle of water or a cup of tea or any such like substances, but not substances that could impair your your ability to ask questions. So we need We need 10, 15 minutes. Remember, the other candidate was supposed to be here at 10:30.
Good morning and welcome to NTV Today. Process forward, so we can cross over now to Parliament.
Deputy Majority Leader and a member of this committee.
Dr. Rachel Nyamai, MP Kitui South, Chair Lands and member of this committee.
Khatib Abdallah Moshetani, Member of Parliament Lunga Lunga, Vice Chair of Lands Committee and a member of this committee.
William Chepkut, INAPCO MP, Vice Chair Special Funds Account Committee and member of this committee. Thank you, Chairman.
Benjamin Jomo Washiali is my name, MP Mumias East in Kakamega County, Chief Whip Majority Party and a member of this committee.
Yusuf Hassan, the Member of Parliament for Kamkunji constituency, Nairobi County.
Sabina Chege, Member for Murang'a County, Chair Health Committee, and a member of this committee.
Kimani Shongo represents Kikuyu constituency, Chair Budget and Appropriations Committee.
David Gikare, Nakuru Town is constituency, Chair Energy, a member of this committee.
Very well. We'll ask you to introduce yourself and immediately after introducing yourself, give us your background, where you went to school, experience, either professional or otherwise, and speak to us for very briefly, about 3 to 5 minutes. Having been nominated to the docket of as Cabinet Secretary in the docket of Water and Sanitation, what, in your opinion, makes you feel that you are suited to this docket? And most significantly, tell us the strengths that you think you would be bringing as an asset in ensuring that you would actualize the vision that there is for this ministry, were you to be approved by the House and subsequently appointed by the President. Give us your original CVs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My names are Simon Kiprono Chelugui. I am 46 years old. I was born and brought up in Baringo County, Oldebes location, Kisanana Division, Mogoti Sub-County. I went to school. My early education, I started in a local primary school called Oldebes Primary School, up to Standard 5. At that time, this primary school, at that time, we didn't have students beyond Standard 5, so I moved to a neighboring primary school called Pombo Primary School, where I did my KCPE in 1986. Our school was the best primary school in Baringo County that day, and I was among the best students in our county. I then proceeded for my high school. I was admitted to Moi High School, Kabarak, for my O-levels, which I finished my secondary education in 1990. I was then invited or admitted to the University of Nairobi, Lower Kabete campus, to study commerce in the business school, where I graduated in 1996. It took us a bit of time because at that time, I will remember the country was undergoing a lot of political changes, and the University of Nairobi was closed 3 times. And in each time, we went home for 1 year. That's why we took long to finish our first degree. After I finished my university education, I then got employed by a firm which was doing or constructing coffee factories, and we went throughout the country servicing and maintaining coffee factories, serving as a director finance. After that, after working in that firm, the coffee industry collapsed, and the business which we were doing was no longer viable. So 3 of us who were students in the university started a farm dealing in water and energy. And I managed that farm for the rest of my life, in working life, up to last year when I resigned to contest a senatorial position in Baringo. In my working experience in Penally, I managed to traverse the entire country, drilling boreholes and doing waterworks. And I have a number of examples of works that we did while I was managing director of that farm. We worked in Wundanyi treatment works. We worked in Davaya, Vanga, Msambweni. We were in Mandera, where we did the water supply of Mandera town. We were also in Kisumu water supply, pumping water and treating water in the lake, and pumping from Dunga intake to Kajulu treatment works. I've also done a lot in Nairobi City, where we were involved and partnered with some Chinese farms in wastewater management in Dandora, Kabete treatment works, Kigiri treatment works and pumping stations, and we have also participated in boosting water which is coming from Dakaini to Nairobi through the pumping stations in Farasi and Ikino in Kidhunguri. Other than Penally construction, I also had a public life where I was appointed by the Minister for Planning to serve as a director and later as chairman of CDF board. Partly when the first chair, Lawrence Machali, took a higher office in KNUT. I acted as chair and I interacted. We were involved in allocation, monitoring and evaluation of CDF projects across the country. And we were the first board who developed the policy that is being used up to now in rolling out CDF projects. We, as a chair and as a chair of Technical and Projects Committee, we were able to shift the arrangement where previously members of parliament were making decisions on their own. We established CDFC's committee. We recruited fund account managers, and these are the programs and management. This is how CDF is running up to this minute. And I'm happy that through CDF, this country was able to experience for the first time how devolution will work. Through CDF, we built so many schools. We did so many water works. We did all hospitals. We bought water tankers. And we did health facilities. Later, in 2000, 2 years ago, after the expiry of my term in CDF board in 2012, I stood for a gubernatorial position in Baringo. And I was not successful, but later on I was appointed as a director of betting control and licensing board, which I served up to last year, February. Mr. Chairman, that is my introduction.
Very well. Mr. Chelugui, before we proceed to, that's good, a very, very good background about what experience and assets you bring to this docket to which you've been nominated. But before we go to specific questions that members will ask you, we will want you to, first of all, to draw your attention to the fact that this process is guided by the provisions of the Public Appointment Parliamentary Approval Act of 2011, and which entirely requires that when a nominee is presented to Parliament, then the Committee of Parliament must notify the public that such a decision has been made and the names have been forwarded and received, and then proceed to invite the public to make representations to the committee and to the House regarding their views about the nominee, but more particularly relating to suitability or otherwise to hold the dockets to which they may be nominated. That is provided for in that act, and as a consequence, the procedure followed is that any member of public who has any views that they may wish to express to the committee is required by Section 9, Section 6, subsection 9 of that Act to file an affidavit and give their views, which may be in praise or in opposition to the nominee. And that is perfectly allowed. And this committee has a responsibility then, when that happens, if an affidavit is filed, duly sworn, to then notify the nominee that there is this kind of affidavit. These are the issues that the member of public has raised relating to the nomination. It may be in praise, as I've said, or it may be in opposition. Now, relating to yourself, when that process was initiated, we did receive, as a committee, an affidavit from one Ann W. Wando of some PO box somewhere in Karen, Nairobi. And as required, this committee met and directed the staff, the secretariat, to inform you in turn, that is for purposes of due process, so that you by the time you come here, you are aware that there's this kind of affidavit. We have also received your replying affidavit to these allegations. But since there's a requirement that whatever this committee does must be done in public, it is fair that even though you have put in your replying affidavit, the public should know what these allegations were, if you are aware of them, and what is your response. And I think this is the opportunity that before we do anything else, we'd want you to tell us about this, because I'm sure you have read through, and I've also read your reply, but it is not fair that the public doesn't know what it is that was raised by this member of public. Over to you, Mr. Chelugui.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I received an affidavit which was sent by the Secretariat of Parliament, and I did make a response yesterday, and it is true. Throughout our business, Ann Wado established a school around 2002, and through a friend, they approached our farm to drill and equip a borehole for the new school called St. Elizabeth Academy. I remember at that instance, she made a deposit of 1 million shillings. And we proceeded and drilled the borehole. and invoice for the difference. We successfully did the borehole, equipped, and handed over, and she paid the difference. The only thing that happened at that time, in 2003, was the geologist had recommended that we drill up to 250. But we didn't get enough water at the first aquifer in 150 meters, and we went to the next aquifer at 220, and we still had little water because he had proposed for the school to run well. We needed at least 20 meters cube of water. So he recommended that we go deeper to 280 meters, which we did. So at the end, in the end, the lady, the CEO, Ann Wadu, paid us only for the agreed contracted sum of 250 meters, which was coming to, at that time, around 2.4 million, because it was deeper. We asked her for the difference, which was on pro rata basis, the difference in depth of 30 meters. At that time, we were charging her 7,000 per meter, which brought the total unpaid figure to 210,000. She was not able to pay that money. However, she promised to give us some work, related work, like water tank and the piping within the school. She was not, she later contracted other people. But we did not mind because we still saw potential in her as a customer, and we held and we waited. 10 years later, 2014, she bought another school around 2013, and she approached us again. We did carry out geological survey on site. It's about 3 kilometers away from the first site, and we confirmed the depths and gave her a quotation, which I saw she has attached in annexure in the affidavit, which was, we quoted 1.5 million shillings. We asked her for 50% down payment, and 50% of 1.5 million is 750. All drillers, when we were quoting for to private farms and individuals, we normally ask for a high advance payment, normally 70%. But for our case, we asked for 50%. The reason being, we had worked with her before, and we knew our ability and our commitment possibly to pay us. So we asked her for 750,000. She needed this water borehole urgent. She needed this borehole because I think someone had approached her to lease the school, Karen Institute of Science and Technology. So water was very important. After about 3 months, she called us and wrote a check in the name of our firm. Please note, in the name of Penelli Construction and Engineering. And the check, we received the check, we banked it, it went through, but we asked for the balance. Because why we ask for this deposit is because we need to buy casings. In the, a casing is the lining that you put in a drilled borehole. So you need this casing to protect so that it doesn't collapse. So a casing, one piece, is approximately, at that time, 8,000 meters, and a piece is 6 meters long. So we needed approximately 500,000 to cover. And these are, you have to source outside. You have to buy from the steel companies, the hardwares. So we asked for the difference. She was not able to raise the difference. However, she kept pushing us to go and drill the bore, and we were not able to agree at that point. And then I asked her, can we refund you your money? Because you are not able to raise the deposit to the quoted amount, and we don't want to keep your money. But she still kept she still insisted that she was going to raise, but if we have capacity, we can proceed and drill, because she was going to raise money from the school fees. So that issue ran for a bit of time. And then last year, around March, she called us and said she had a financial issue and she needed some little bit of money. So she asked for a part of that 500,000, which is 150,000. We gave her, she banked the check, the money went through. So our deposit reduced from 500 to 350. Now, after that, she was not able to. Now we didn't know now what to do, because she wants the ball and she's not able to raise the money. Around July last year, when I was campaigning in Baringo, I think Anwado, in our own wisdom, shared the quotation, the 500,000 check to my competitors, which was printed and appeared in the newspapers. I called her because I thought maybe now she's engaging in malice, she's engaging in witch hunt, and possibly bringing politics in a commercial relationship. I have no problem, Mr. Chairman. I've seen what she has attached. She has not attached the payments that we did, which I've attached inclusive of a refund, of partial refund of 150, and also she breached a commercial relationship where we had quoted and asked her for 50% of the amount to drill the borehole. So, Mr. Chair, there are other avenues to deal with this. In all our commercial relationship, there is a provision for dispute resolution. There is no day Anwado has called me when I was managing director of that farm, through an SMS, through a phone call, through a written letter, or even come to our office. There is no letter from a lawyer. There is no communication at all. What we have is a check and a quotation. That is all that she had. So I believe, and that farm is still open, is ready, and available to drill the ball. If she is able to raise the money to the deposit required, I believe the farm is in business and they are still ready to go and drill. If she wants a refund of a deposit, the farm, I believe, is ready to refund her. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're no longer the MD. That's
yes, Mr. Chair. I left last year.
And the money was paid to the company.
It was paid to the company. There is a statement attached,
yeah,
and there is a check attached.
Oh yeah, this is the photograph. Police pursue Baringo aspirant over $500,000 boho cash. This is July 20th, 2017.
Mr. Chair, I've never been called by any police officer. I've never gone to any police station, and this issue is purely commercial, and I am ready to be challenged.
Now, Mr. Chelugui, I will now, of course, members are at liberty to ask you questions in furtherance to what you have said in relation to this issue, but members are at liberty to ask other questions on suitability and integrity. I believe this is trying to address the issue of integrity, but members are at liberty. Member for Muranga.
Thank you, Chair. And I want to congratulate Mr. Chelugui for being nominated at the position. And from his CV, he seems to be in the right place. My interest will be, though he has clarified that he has already rendered resignation as a director, whether he'll have conflict of interest from the previous company he worked for and now where he is. But my main question is this one. There is scarcity of water in Kenya. Even the UN has classified Kenya as a chronically water scarce country. We have counties that produces water and supplies water in Kenya. In your own opinion, do you think those counties should be compensated? And how do you plan to deal? Because water mainly is dealt with by the county government. How do you plan to deal with many water companies that we have supplying water to the residents, and most of them exploiting the residents? How do you plan to work with the county government to make sure that Kenyans have access to water, and water is also affordable, and we have clean water in Kenya? Thank you.
For Turkana County?
Thank you, Chair.
Record, member for Turkana County is Honorable Joyce Emaniko. Member for Muranga, who has just spoken, is Honorable Sabina Chege.
Thank you, Chair. I want to start by congratulating Simon for the nomination. And looking at your CV and the experience and what you have just told us, you are a real water guru, technically in terms of policy formulation and otherwise. Now, my question is on still on water. So I think the issue of the affidavit to me is clear now. So I'm going straight to the job you are going to do, if approved. The UN classifies Kenya as a chronically water deficit country on the basis of having one of the lowest water replenishment rates, that is 647 cubic meters below the 1,000 cubic meters. I think that's the requirement per capita annually. Now, in Turkana, I hope this includes the discoveries in Turkana by UNESCO and the government, the Lotikipi and Napu water aquifers that we were told are carrying 250 million cubic meters, and that would suffice water needs for Kenya for the next 70 years. Looking at all this, what specific plans do you have to address the deficit and even to exploit these water resources that have been discovered, particularly given the fact that Turkana itself is water deficit, and we have the pastoralists crossing the borders. Even now, most of them are in Uganda, in their thousands with their livestock to look for pastures and water. Thank you.
Leader Majority.
Thank you, Chair. Simon, congratulations. Number one, you have been involved in drilling of boreholes, and you have been the head of a company that was charging to drill a borehole for 1.5 million. Information available to us that the government spends over 5 to 6 million to drill a borehole. Can you confirm to this committee that once, if this committee approves you and the president appoints you, you have a good news for Kenyans who want to drill boreholes, that the price will reduce by 80%. And you must convince us that while you are the private sector, you could do that, but not at government. Number two, who are these political guys who are fighting you? You know, Parliament is a house of record. Who are these people who used Madam Awado, I think, during the height of your elections? And who was your competitor in the last general election? And if your competitor walks to your office now as a senator of Baringo, will you serve him without fear or favor? Or just because you had a grueling competition, you will keep him at the awaiting boardroom for 5 hours? Last and finally, and this is very important, there are too many briefcase companies masquerading as companies bottling water, disregarding the safety and the hygiene and the environment of the water we drink in Nairobi and everywhere in the country. People are doing it in their homes, anywhere. How can you assure that if you get the job, you will make sure your ministry and other regulators in government that the water we drink, the bottled water that is in the market, will meet all the necessary health and safety standards? Thank you, Chair.
May I respond to those questions first? Chelugui.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members, for those questions. Mr. Chair, I would request that I digress a bit, but in the process answer the honorable members. Then I conclude by specific answers to the questions.
As long as it is relevant.
It's relevant.
Yeah, because rules of relevance are very important.
It is true, Mr. Chair, that Kenya is a water deficit country, and we have low coverage. However, I want to thank the leadership of the country and also for putting programs that are going to address this problem and the challenge. And a number of issues have been identified, a number of challenges, and also mitigating considerations have been put in place. And issues of water relates to water as a resource, which is anchored or recognized very well in our constitution as a right. And therefore, the challenge that we will have as a ministry, and God willing, this committee approving my nomination, water resource will be an issue, a big issue, because we deal with the sourcing, protection of our catchment, and also sharing of this resource. It is true that some parts of this country are suffering inadequacy, and some parts of this country have relative plenty. So water resources is a critical issue. So we must be able to address the sources for us to address the deficit. So because of the relevance issue that you've raised, I will now I'll go specifically to Honorable Sabina Cheke, which is talked about a conflict of interest, which I've already explained to this committee that I left that firm, and therefore, and I also understand Public Ethics Act. I've served in public before. I served as CDF chair before. Boreholes and water projects were the mainstay of funding for CDF projects in all the 3/4 of this country. But there is no single project, no single. I was dealing with up to 300 proposals from all the 210 constituencies, but I never bidded or applied for any single project because of the Public Ethics Act or conduct. On scarcity of water, Honorable Sabina Cheke, the MP for Murang'a, it is true, Nairobi benefits a lot from Murang'a, and it is almost the only frontier to support Nairobi City. As we stand now, Nairobi County or Nairobi City, which is the face of Kenya, our headquarters, we require 550,000 meters cube of water every day. And yet, we are able, the design and supply capacity as we speak now is 300,000. We have sources from Dakaini. We have sources of water from Kikuyu Spring, which is very small, although now it's feeding Kikuyu town and a little bit of parts of Kabete. But many programs are now looking at Murang'a. We have Northern Collector Tunnel, which is in 25%, I believe now. And we have treatment works at Kigoro, which is 80% now, which will bring in 140,000 meters cube of water to the city of Nairobi. However, for us, as the demand for water increases, the population is also increasing. So this is an endless game. We must continuously invest in our sources. So, Madam Honorable Sabina is concerned about those counties that produce water. And I believe, and God willing, Honorable, in about 3 years, under my leadership, if approved by this committee, Murang'a is likely, apart from the lower sides of Kakusi and Maragua, will be almost 100% covered, considering the programs that are in place now. As we transfer water from Muranga, we are also going to make programs for the catchment areas, for the neighborhood, so that they both benefit from this resource. We have other cases like Chebara in Marakwet, which takes water to Eldoret, and areas like Naltresh, which brings water from Kilimanjaro across Kajiado, Makueni, and Machakos. All these neighborhood communities require the same resource. So, as we transfer water, we are going to put programs to also provide water to the neighborhood. Madam Cheke has also asked about the water service providers, companies that are charged with the responsibility of dealing with the consumers, including Muranga Water, Moswasco, Thika Water and Sewerage, Nairobi Water and Sewerage, Kericho Water and Sewerage, Kisumu. We have also in Voi, we have water companies in Narok, we have water works in Meru Water and Sewerage. These companies, they are 65 in number, and they are licensed by the ministry through Water Resource Management Authority to abstract water. They are also licensed by Water Resources Regulatory Board to protect consumers and also to ensure quality and health, the quality of the water. My role, if approved, as this Cabinet Secretary for Water, is to empower and build capacity, because that is a national function, so that our citizens are able to get water cheaper than oil, cheaper than fuel, and ensure supply. Honorable Joyce Emanikor, the MP for Turkana. I've worked in Turkana. It is a water deficit county. I've done works in Lorengipi. I've done works in Lodwar, and I understand the challenge the people of Turkana. Every year, we see the people of Turkana in the news, looking for water. And definition of access is ability to reach the nearest water point in 30 minutes. This may become. This is a long. Is a big vision. This is going to be a challenge. However, Turkana County, we have the government of Kenya and other bilateral donors have discovered huge aquifers in parts of Turkana, and therefore we would pursue programs that are going to explore these aquifers for the benefit of the people of Turkana and possibly the neighborhood. Honorable Duale, the leader of majority, and has asked me about the cost of boreholes. Honorable Mr. Chair, the cost of a borehole is dependent on the depth, it's dependent on the distance, it's dependent the depth, because every meter is costed, and the deeper the borehole, the more expensive it becomes. So as a minister, if approved by this committee, I'll be able to monitor all the companies that are licensed to drill boreholes, so that we get value for money in managing, in providing water to our citizens. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I forgot the water bottling companies. These farms are licensed by Kenya National Bureau of Standards. They give them the diamond seal. However, how they source their water, some of them are sourcing water from our pipelines. Some of them are sourcing our water from lakes. But the farm that currently licensed them is Kenyan Bureau of Standards. We will partner, collaborate with them, so that Kenyans can get quality water from these bottling farms, which sometimes is more expensive than oil. Mr. Chair, it's clear when I ran for senatorial position in Baringo, I had only one opponent, and I will be able, once appointed or once approved by this committee, I'll be able to deal with all Kenyans. I'll be non-political. I'll provide services, and I will attend to all members from both sides of the coalition who are citizens of this country or visiting this country. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Indeed, I think to the docket that you've been nominated, I think even Baringo will fall almost the same category as Turkana. Yes. So, in terms of how you handle those people that visit you, notwithstanding whether they ran against you or not, I think that's a commitment you are giving to the country.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
For the next round of questions, Katibu Mashetani.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, let me take this opportunity to congratulate Mr. Simon for being a nominee of this docket. Water is life. And as we know that water has been is devolved to county government, partially devolved to county government. And as of now, most of the counties are unable to sustain or effectively serve the people, the responsibilities or the functions that they have been devolved. I don't know what will be your intervention, because you realize in terms of distribution of water, it is devolved, but counties are unable to serve their people in those functions. So I will request you, once you are approved by Parliament and the House, to intervene in these circumstances so that water can be distributed to areas that have been marginalized for too long. Thank you so much. Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask for a permission because we are going for prayers. We'll be back after 1 hour probably. Thank you.
Well, the nominee will then be responding in your absence. But no problem, the committee will take the next questions will come from the Deputy Speaker.
Yes, Mr. Chelugui, a very brief one. Your docket will be dealing with some of the mega projects in this country. We have Chemususu, we have Itare Dam, which is in my constituency, we have Muranga, we have several dams that are being built, multi-billion projects. Would you confirm on record that in those projects, one, that the communities from around the areas will benefit in 2 ways? Number one, benefit in terms of also utilizing and having the water from those mega projects. And secondly, that in terms of employment, first priority will be given, because in Itare Dam we have a problem. First priority will be given to the locals. On record. Thank you. If you are approved.
Member for Kitui South. Honorable Rachel Nyamoi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, Chair, I would like to congratulate Simon Chelugui for being nominated, and also say that I've listened to him connect what he has done, and also mentioned the areas of this country where he has been to, and considering his age, I would like to commend him for that. My question regards the fact that this ministry that you are likely to head, if approved by this committee, deals with sustainable management of water as a natural resource. How do you intend to use the experience that you've already gained to your advantage? Thank you, Chair.
Member for Mumi Assist.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I also want to join my colleagues in thanking and congratulating Simon Chelugui for this nomination, and quickly add that this docket is a docket that is handling multi-billion projects. And given the briefing you have given us, it appears that you have done quite a bit of homework before you joined this. Otherwise, you sought the permission from the HE to nominate you. I wanted to ask, I'm sure in the course, you must have been to Marsabit, where we have Badaza Dam, and the Kitui, where we have Uma Dam. These are very huge projects. And we are aware as a country that these projects have stalled. More than 10 years, nothing is happening. Could you tell us as a committee what you are likely to do in terms of making sure that these dams continue and help the people in those regions where they have been projected?
Over to you, Mr. Chelugui.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, honorable members. Mr. Chair, the Honorable Katib Mwashetani has asked about distribution of water and the devolution and as a devolved resource. Mr. Chair, it is true that water is a devolved function, and the counties are charged with the responsibility of giving our people water. However, as a national, the role of national government is to provide the necessary framework and also support our counties which were recently established, because you realize their capacity in terms of human resource and even ability to raise funds to fund those projects is a national function. So if nominated as a CS for water, we will be able, one, to build capacity for those water service providers so that they are able to give wholesome, quality, and reasonable priced water. At this juncture, Mr. Chair, it's also good to note that we will not be able to sustain water supply without making a small payment. I have heard and seen some of the water service providers or the public asking for free water, and it will be a challenge because this resource we must continuously invest. As we speak now, Mr. Chair, 40 billion shillings is invested annually in the water sector. For us to support and provide 100% coverage, which we have set ourselves, at the moment we are doing about 60% coverage. And the programs that we have put in place, including Karimenu, Dakaini, Thika Dam for Nairobi, and other programs in the part of the country, including Butte Dam, the expansion of works in Omas mentioned by the honorable member, and also dams like Dakaini and Itare and Chemasusu. These are programs that are put in place to increase the coverage. For example, the Northern Collector Tunnel will be able to cover 400,000 people. And as a ministry, we will support the water service providers in providing water to our consumers. Maybe on the same, we need to be innovative. Mr. Chair, I'm aware of a new act which is now at a transition level, the National Water Act 2016, which has separated national and county works. And at the national level, we will be able to assist in the inter-county water infrastructure, meaning we can move water from Taita Taveta to Mombasa using Mzima Spring. And along the line, we'll be able to support the water companies, including Voi, Mwatate, Undani. Expansion of like Njoro Kubwa in Taita Taveta will be able to support the local community, and the water companies in those counties will be able to benefit. When we talk of Chemasusu, which moves water from Eldama Ravine, Baringo, where I come from, we'll also support them around Eldama Ravine, the catchment areas, and along the route which covers Rongai and Nakuru town. So those water companies will benefit. They are also, the national government is also expected to use the national revenue, the share of the national revenue, to support the water service providers. And the development and borrowing loans sometimes, or working with our bilateral partners, will be able to support our counties. The question from Honorable Deputy Speaker, Honorable Cheboy, he asked about how we are going to support the local communities where these mega dams are being constructed. And he cited Itare, Chemasusu. And we have other big dams. You are aware, Mr. Chair, the government at the moment is working on Isiolo Dam, which is going to support the lower Wazonyiro drainage area, the upper, because there have been conflicts before between the lower and the downstream. And this dam is going to support the resort city of Isiolo and the neighborhood. So, as a CS, if approved by this House, I'm going to ensure that those water service boards, who are the procuring entities, are going to ensure employment of locals by those contractors, most of them being Chinese and foreign. They give them subcontracts, they give them direct jobs as technicians, as foremen, as masons, as carpenters. It's huge. This country is borrowing up to 43 billion to do Itare from the Italian people. And we are also borrowing through the national government. The national government is also providing funds to do the treatment works for Chemasusu, which up to now has consumed 4 billion shillings and is about 35%. The dam itself is ready, but the treatment works are 35%, same as Itare, which is now estimated to be 20% of the works. Mr. Chair, the Honorable Rachel Nyamai has asked about sustainability of the water, of water as a resource. And using my experience, the programs that we are putting in place now, which this country is emphasizing more on gravity, is going to ensure sustainability. And our responsibility will be majorly how to share and how to in the intervening period where we still have low supply, is to share that resource equitably across the lines, the pipeline of those waterworks. I'm aware of Tuake, which was recent. Kenya government signed an agreement with the Exim Bank of the people of China. This dam is a multi-purpose dam. It will be used for human farming, irrigation works, and it will support the towns of Kitui and Makueni. We have read a bit, the government, the Ministry of Water, or the North Water Supply, we have had challenge. The Ministry of Water has had challenges in the pumping cost, the cost of electricity, and I believe around Makueni we will develop or will identify a suitable place to put a storage facility, a dam that will gravitate water to the lower sides of Mavoko and Ukambani. Tuake is the dam of the next century, because we are also going to benefit through power generation. The Honorable Benjamin Washali, the Jeep Whip and member of this committee, thank you, has talked about 2 mega projects which were rolled out in 2013 using infrastructural bonds together with Chemasusu and Kiserian. And I can report Kiserian and Chemasusu were done and completed and handed over. by National Water and Conservation. However, Omar Dam has been facing contractual conflict, and this project was about 70% complete at the time of stoppage. Badaza Dam is on the lower forest of Marsabit, and it was intended to support the people of Marsabit town for the next 50 years. This project was supposed to be constructed with an height of 51 meters. And this dam, it went into contractual conflict. The contractor asked for compensation. The National Water and Sewerage Corporation went for arbitration and agreed, and the contractor was compensated and paid. I believe as the new CS for water, I will champion and steer very fast the completion of the outstanding works in the two dams, so that the people of Kitui who will benefit from Omar Dam and Marsabit will get value for this project, from this project. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, not too bad. Member for Pokot County.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for this opportunity again. I want to congratulate Chelugui for the good work he has done to West Pokot County and Turkana County. I'm very proud to indicate that he has dug 3 water dams in West Pokot County in 3 sub-counties. That is Sigor, Kacheliba constituency, and Pokot Central. That is the constituency of Honorable Kosing. One question I want to ask Mr. Chelugui, that West Pokot County and other neighboring counties have permanent rivers which are not being used by the locals. In West Pokot, we have 2 permanent rivers, that is River Swam and Kerio. And these rivers are not giving any benefit to the community. And at the same time, the community can benefit through irrigation. So as if you are given this position, what are you going to do to make sure that we reduce these issues of hunger through practicing irrigation in these ASAL counties? And finally, there is a very big project that was initiated by His Excellency the President and the Deputy President, a water project that has been built in Pokot South constituency. It's called Murunyi Water Project. It's a project worth 9 billion Kenya shillings. My question to Chelugui is that what plans, if you are given this position, what do you intend, or how do you intend to make sure that this water is spread all the way from the highlands to the lower parts of West Pokot, that is Kacheliba constituency and Sigor constituency, where we have some ASAL areas that are notorious drought-prone areas, and women are really suffering in traveling long distance in look for water. Therefore, I kindly want to request that if you get this position, consider and make sure that this water is taken to these very far or distant places where there is no water. That is Alale Ward and Masol Ward. Thank you.
Member for Kitutu Chache North.
Thank you.
Kitutu Chache North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to congratulate Mr. Chelugui for his nomination. And he seems to be having a lot of experience in waters. Maybe that's what the president considered before he could appoint you. Mr. Chelugui, water, the government has got a policy of big four agenda as a strategy to attain our vision 2030. How do you see the Ministry of Water and Sanitation and yourself as a person at the helm of that ministry, how can you contribute towards attainment of these big four? Two, you have mentioned a lot of counties where you have provided water, clean water in most parts of this country. But there are 3 or 4 counties which are assumed to be having water, when in fact what they have is polluted water. That is Kisii, Nyamira, Bomet, and Kericho. Are you going to put them as a priority areas for water projects to be undertaken by the ministry? And finally, these water companies, since you have been involved in water, in a water company, are these water companies registered so that in case they don't perform the job they have been contracted to do, where an aggrieved person can seek redress?
For Kikuyu.
Thank you, Chair. Mine is to join my colleagues, of course, in congratulating you, Mr. Chelugui, on your nomination. 2, you come from an Asal district. You have been a politician in that county, in Baringo County, which is part of Baringo is Asal. Last week, there were reports in the media of schools being closed down in Tiati for lack of water. Do you think this gives you a potential area of conflict of interest in the fact that you have had political ambition? Baringo is Asal. Are we going to see you concentrate more on Baringo County to provide water? And I'm not saying the people of Tiati indeed do deserve water, and I would encourage you to make sure that you give them water where schools are being closed for lack of water. But will that in any way interfere with your objectivity in terms of also ensuring that other parts of the country that are water deficient get water? 2, you have mentioned Kikuyu Springs, Moranga. You did not mention Sasumua Dam in Lari, which is providing 12% of the water being consumed in Nairobi. Yet parts of Lari, Limuru, Kikuyu, Kabete, and Kiamba, where the pipeline passes through, are water deficient. What measures are you going to take to ensure that all these areas become water sufficient? Lastly is on sanitation. There are very many authorities and agencies within your ministry that are dealing with the resource of water management. However, the issue of sanitation, and it pulls to one of the agenda items on healthcare. Do you have plans maybe to establish an agency or a saga that will specifically deal with sanitation matters? Because you tend also to, the ministry tends to deal more with water issues and leaves behind the sanitation issue. And how will you work with county governments and other ministries like that of environment to deal with the question of sanitation?
Mr. Chelugui, just take notes of all the questions. I intend now, I have decided that we'll just clear with everybody. Member for Nakuru Town East.
Thank you, Chair. Again, having worked in the implementation committee, we dealt with a petition regarding the flooding in Tana River or the Tana Delta. And that petition, we were trying to address what happened in Tana, because the locals were complaining so much about the flooding. But now when we were told the flooding does not come from it, actually the source is from Tharakanithi and the upstream. There was a proposal to have a project, a huge project called the High Grand Fall, that was going to affect 3 counties, that is Tharakanithi, Kitui, and Embu. And of course, taking into cognizance of the 4 major agendas of the country about food security. And that the High Grand Fall was supposed to also take the water for irrigation by gravity all the way to the Galana irrigation project. That project, which was going to cost around 150 billion on a build, operate and transfer, and we had gotten a donor from the French government who wanted to do that, and they would build the High Grand Fall, operate, and then later after some years transfer. And that would have really addressed the food shortage issue, or the the food security issue at Galana. I don't know how fast are you going to fasten that process, and maybe bring the investors, assure the investors that, of course, one of the items that the only requirement that the government was supposed to do is to provide around 250 million for public sensitization, some form of compensation, because most of the land over 50,000 acres belongs to the government, which is ready. It was only now on a few other areas that the compensation was. How fast are you going to? And secondly, regarding the Itare Dam, there was a lot of politics regarding that the water is coming only to serve Nakuru and affect areas like Bomet, Kericho. What is your take on the effect of Itare Dam on matters related to Kericho and Bomet and the other areas? Thank you.
Member 001, David Ole Sankok.
Okay, let me, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me congratulate Mr. Chelugui for this appointment, and it seems you have really done your research very well. And thank you very much. You really have the knowledge of the ministry if approved that you will be heading. But we have concentrated so much on underground water. I don't know, because you have been drilling boreholes and run of water. We have forgotten that we have two sources of water above. One from our mountains, Mount Kenya, for instance, and Mount Kilimanjaro, and Mount Elgon. And these waters can be tapped through gravity. We have also forgotten that there is interrelation between water, forestry, and environment, especially when we integrate our environment. How will you be relating with the Ministry of Environment to make sure that certain trees that affect our water, for instance, when you talk of eucalyptus, it seems that they dry up our water sources. And when you talk of bamboo forest or tree, it increase or preserve our water sources. And some plants, commercial crops like tea, preserve and increase our rainfall, hence preserving our water towers. Will you be able to correlate with the Ministry of Environment together with the Ministry of Agriculture, so that certain areas like our highlands, instead of cultivating barley like in the Mao ranges, instead of cultivating barley, we can now cultivate tea, so that we also increase our water. We can tap from the water above. I've said there's water from the clouds and there is one from the mountains. Tap on those two.
And lastly, member for, member for Pokot South.
Thank you, Chair, our Speaker. Chelugui, we want also to congratulate you for your nomination, CS. I think you really qualify. I've looked at your CV and your experience. The President made the right choice in bringing you to this ministry. However, I have two issues with you, or questions. Number one, the ministry in the past has been known for water, and yet it's water and sanitation. Your colleague, your predecessor, Honorable Amalwa, did very well in terms of bringing up these mega projects you're talking about, and people before him. But particularly, he did a good job in fundraising, getting those dams done. Now, are you going there just only to maintain, or you're going to come up with your own thinking? I want to pick your mind and say, what are you going to do with sanitation, particularly? Look, and I want to give an example of a town which I know best, which is Kapenguria. And Kapenguria is known for good reasons. Of Kapenguria 6, the independence of this country was born in Kapenguria. But even up to now, it doesn't have a sewer system. And many other towns of that kind. what will you do, CS, to be able to look at that? Maybe that might be your legacy, because are you going to maintain somebody's work, or you're going to begin your own? 2, and finally, the area of land and water and dams is correlated. And I've seen, going forward, the land might be even more, compensation, or government buying land to build these mega projects might be more expensive than building the project itself. And that will be the biggest problem, CS, going forward in our country. What will you do to be able to arrest this thing? Because when you come up with a proposal tomorrow to say you have identified a place to build a dam, now you have talked about some dams in Upper Eastern and Eastern. People are watching you now, and some people are going to buy land there quickly for speculation, because you are coming with good money. Then when you go there to build that water dam for people, then the price might be exorbitant that you will not even build the water project. How are you going to do that, CS, to arrest this so that we build our project in Kenya? Otherwise, in future, land compensation will be more expensive than the project itself. Thank you, Chair.
Well, maybe the CS nominee may not be aware of some of the bill called land value index, but nevertheless, maybe it's a matter that you need to address. Finally, member for Taita Taveta, and if possibly we could now try to bring up the particular, because a lot of the functions that go to this docket will be shared. I think even as members, we need to appreciate that. A lot of them will be shared between the national functions will be shared between the national government and the county governments. And we are not wishing away the existence of the county governments. There's a lot that will require collaboration and coordination, which are issues I think we would want the nominee to address, because these questions about what is happening in this constituency and the other now may be very difficult to deal with. Then you have CDF and county government, and maybe we are raising them because the nominee is saying that he has experience working as a member of the CDF board. But I think it is fair to appreciate that many of these functions, save at policy level, implementation will require the collaboration and cooperation of the county governments, which we need also to put into the fore as we put in questions to the CS. Honorable Mzigi.
Thank you, Chair. I also want to begin by congratulating Mr. Chelugui for this nominee. And then I also want to appreciate the fact that he noted that there are some areas or some sources where water is being transferred to water is being transferred to other areas, and the sources or the community where the water comes from don't benefit, because Taita Taveta is one of them. We have the Mzima Spring where water goes to Mombasa, and in Taita Taveta we don't have water. So we are hoping with the new Mzima 2 project, the people of Taita Taveta will benefit from the water which is going to be going to Mombasa as well. My question to you is, water being an essential commodity, what do you see as immediate issue that ought to be addressed within the ministry you have been nominated for, and how are you planning to tackle it? And again, there are also some places, even in the county, my county where I come from, where the farmers cannot go ahead with their farming activities because of flooding. What do you intend to do with the places where there's a lot of flooding? How are you going to help the people who are affected by the floods? Thank you.
Well, Mr. Chelugui, I think you can respond now.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I'll start with a question from the Honorable Tommy Tom, from MP from West Pokot. We have currently a few programs as a ministry, in the Ministry of Water, which are ongoing. The Sioi Dam project is ongoing, and it has experienced some financing challenges, but is substantially done to completion level of, I think 70% from my information is done. This project is going to provide water to Kapinguria and the lower sides of Chepareria in West Pokot. Following the supply of water, it now demands, in answering the question from the Honorable Kosing, the treatment of the wastewater. And the design protocol starts with the supply and the treatment of the used or wasted water. Although we will try, Kenyans may be very conservative, but we will try to persuade Kenyans on the 3 R's to reuse and recycle the water. It is possible to use treated wastewater for agriculture, even from Nairobi. We have a lot of ponds in Dandora and Ruai, and we spend so much money as a country to treat and release the water. We could have used that water which we moved from Murang'a all the way to Nairobi to use in agricultural activities in the lower sides of Mavoko and Tala, Kangundo. We can do a lot of farming using those water, because I think we can generate and address food security through that. Now, in West Pokot is a nasal county as defined and identified by Drought Management Authority. And as such, I know the previous, the leadership at the moment has been employing various interventions to address the rural and the towns of West Pokot. This project, Sioi Muruny, which is a multi-purpose dam costing Kenyans 9 billion shillings, is going to mitigate some of the challenges the people of West Pokot have been facing. On the lower sides of the Nzoia and the borders of Marakwet and Pokot, I will work together with the irrigation department, which has now moved to another ministry, to provide water and support them in implementing this project. As we speak now, we are yet to commence because of the community issues that are being addressed as raised in a question, which I'm going to talk about in terms of compensation. And I think, as you say, I'm also aware about the land valuation index, which is a big challenge in our country. I know power supply has been facing the challenge in transmission, same as water, and even our roads, and even our railway. And therefore, as a ministry, we will collaborate with other government agencies in addressing that issue of land, which is affecting almost all our infrastructural projects. On the issue of also from the Honorable Jimmy Angwenyi, he has asked me about my personal and possibly the relationship between water and the Big Four. Mr. Chair, last year we set ourselves 4 major objectives to address housing, manufacturing, health, and also food security. Water is an enabler to this Big Four. This government, or the Jubilee government, has projected to give Kenyans 500,000 houses in the next 5 years. And I believe with these programs cannot achieve their objective if there is no water. So as a minister or a CS, if approved, I'll be able to prioritize these programs so that we are in tandem with the national objective. On health, 80% of our communicable and waterborne diseases are waterborne diseases. Bilharzia, cholera, dysentery, all are water related. And my assignment will be to give Kenyans wholesome, safe, treated water, so that we are able to move our citizens from the hospitals to the working, to farming, to manufacturing, and other productive sectors of our economy. Mr. Chair, on the issue of manufacturing, there is no factory, there is no industry that can run, can be operationalized without water. In steel, we need water to do the cooling. We need water in cement factories, in our beverage factories, and water is a serious contributor to their success. As a CS, if approved, I will champion and support the government in that pillar. On the issue of food security, irrigation is the use of water. That is the literal meaning. And as a water sector, we'll work together with the department so that Kulalu and Galana get adequate water from the Tana or from the Grand Falls, as mentioned by Honorable Kigaria, and also other programs like reclaiming our northern part of Kenya, where this country is divided into 5 drainage areas. We have 2, the Tana and the Lake Basins drainage zones, which are considered as having surplus or adequate water from ground, from the clouds, even as said by Honorable Sangok, or from the ground. But we have other 3 basins. That is the Wasonyiro, that is the Rift Valley, and the Adi, which are actually having deficient. As a CS for water, we will develop, explore, carry out studies to prioritize areas we can source our water. And this will mean taking full, working in partnership with SAGAs like Water Resources Management Authority, which is supposed to identify ahead of time the next sources of our water supply for our human consumption, for our farming use, for our industries, for our housing. Mr. Chair, the Honorable Jimmy Angwenyi has raised a concern on my examples, but I believe also I know of some programs in Nyamache, development of Nyamache Dam, which is going to be multi-purpose in Nyamira, and this project is also going to support those the upper zones of Nyanza, that is Kisii, Nyamira, and Bomet is also going to be covered through a project which I think is in program, but my role will be to provide leadership to ensure a quick implementation of Bosto Dam in Bomet County. He has also asked about water service providers registration, and I want to say this, Mr. Chair. In 2002, Kenya government came up through the leadership of the Honorable Martha Karua with the Water Act, which devolved the water provision from headquarters Nairobi to various SACAs. We have Water Resources Management Authority, which is handling identification and permits for abstraction of water from rivers, boreholes, and all our water sources. We have Water Regulatory Board, which is licensed in quality and ensuring that the tariffs are managed. And we have our KEWI, which is doing our research and feasibility, and we also Water Trust Fund, which mobilizes resources for the poor. It is raising funds from the donors and the government to support our poor people. So, water service providers are licensed by water service boards, which are providing currently the works. They source money from our donors, from our government, and provide these facilities. My role as a CS is to ensure that Water Regulatory Board is able to license and provide oversight, govern oversight, and come up with correct legislation so that they give us quality water. They don't dispose waste in the, come up with, through this house also and this committee, to come up with bills that will protect consumers so that we reduce the number of people who are aggrieved by water providers. And all of them are always subject to evaluation by the Water Regulation Board. Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah has talked about schools being closed in Tiaty. Mr. Chair, it is true that I was an aspirant for senatorial position in Baringo, but I am here before you as a candidate for as a CS candidate or nominee, and my focus will be the Kenyan people. I know Tiaty people also look up to me for water provision. I'll be fair, and I'll exercise fair discretion in sharing and providing water to our Kenyan people, including the people of Tiaty and other needy parts of this country. Mr. Chair, there are various dams and various parts of Kikuyu and Kiambu County which are still water deficient, especially the lower sides of Karai. And there are plans which again will require my leadership to complete, including the Katei Dam, which is next to Sasumua in Nyandarua County, which will serve the lower sides of Kikuyu and parts of Westlands, parts of Karen, which are now pumping water from Mudiru to Karen. You will realize, Mr. Chair, the entire Karen is depending on poles right now. And I will put programs to ensure that our capital city, our major cities are covered, including the slums, using Water Trust Fund. We will source funds. We'll talk to donors. We'll talk to our government. We'll talk to our treasury so that all of us are able to access water within our vicinity. On issue of sanitation, I think it has now been more pronounced in the ministry because we are the people will be the people responsible for water provision, and we will also take care of the wastewater. I want to thank the Honorable Michuki, who was then Minister for Environment, for cleaning our rivers. I will continue with the same spirit to ensure our wastewater is treated so that, including coming up with bills and drafting, working together with Parliament and the committee relevant for this ministry to come up with bills that will deter pollution, dumping, and discharge of wastewater and sludge in our rivers or in our environment so that we have fair management of our waste. The Honorable Kigaria has raised the issue of flooding in Tana River. And these waters are coming from the Upper Tana. And Mr. Chair, you'll realize we used to have serious problems in Budalangi and the Lower Sio in Busia. And through the works, through National Water Corporation, this problem has almost, or to some large extent, been taken care of. We'll employ the same strategy to take care of the areas like Tana, so that our people are safe from the storm water. On the issue of the I Grand Force, which was supposed to provide water for the Kalana Kulalu, which we estimate, and this will be part of our assignment, to provide food security to our people. Because I personally feel, where I come from is an Asal area. We suffer as a people for lack of food sometimes, and our challenge is to ensure that that dignity is retained or regained by all Kenyans. So this project, the donor, the BOT programs, will explore all possible financing arrangements. There are other innovative methods which can be used, and I'll explore as the nominee for CS will explore. One of them is the PPPs. Mr. Chair, I will propose to the House to rechange. That PPP was Act of 2013, has so many approval stages, from inception, from conception, feasibility, from negotiations, and even from contracting, requires approval. This discourages investors. I think we need to make it investor friendly, and we'll be making suggestions to the House so that it becomes attractive. It is possible. We have done it before in this country. In 1990 and 2000, Malindi Water and Sewerage was managed by a private firm called HB-CAF. And they were able to extend connectivity up to 80% in that time, at that time. Today, Malindi has gone back to almost 50% after they left the management in 2000. We'll still be there as a ministry to regulate tariffs to protect consumers from exploitation by private firm. But it will relieve our treasury from the pressure of borrowing. And we will be able to, we could also cluster other successful water companies into viable businesses to reach the level of in European countries. We have them by water, which are listed at the stock exchange. And through those arrangements, we will be able to raise money to expand connectivity and coverage, so that in 3 years, we'll be able to raise the coverage from 60% to 80%. And by 2030, hopefully, we should be able to provide, we should be able to reach universal water coverage. We have also other programs. We can also come up with innovative ways of funding, because water is a high capital intensive undertaking. We have Karimenu Dam, and we have Itare Dam, which the government is currently experimenting and is undertaking on engineering, procurement, construction, and funding, where the contractor is sourcing money at the rates which are acceptable to our treasury. This will quicken and speed up the implementation program, so that within the 3 years period, we'll be able to cover the whole country with water. The Honorable, to answer Honorable Kikaria, is we will explore various financing strategy together with the Treasury, which is charged with the responsibility of raising funds and financing our projects, to be able to fast track this I-Grants project, which is very important. On Itare Dam and many other projects, we have had conflicts. I know there are so many conflicts relating to land and compensation issues, and we should be able to work with the Lands Ministry, and using government rates in valuation, we should be able to engage and sensitize the public early enough in time. Mr. Chair, in 1 minute, the Honorable Sankok has also talked about the underground water. I know there are very many sources that we can explore. Using our 5 towers, the Aberdare, Mount Kenya, Mount Elgon, Cherangany, and Mau, we should be able to explore so many ways of raising this water resource. Finally, Mr. Honorable Kosing, Kapenguria, I think I've been able to answer. The Honorable Aika of Taita Taveta has raised the concern, on Msima Line 2. And as earlier answered, we will work together with the communities to ensure that not those who are living in the catchment areas benefit from this resource. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chelugui. You've been forthright with the committee, responded fairly well to the questions that have been addressed to you. We therefore wish to release you and hand hand over, give him back his original CVs.
The last one. Huh? Is he on the program?
I don't know why he's not here.
Well, very well. I think, Mr. Chelugui, unless you have something to tell us by way of parting shots, you are free to leave. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair and the honorable members, I want to thank this committee for the time they have accorded me, and more so thank His Excellency the President, the Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta, for showing confidence in me to steer this very important department so that we can achieve our Big Four agendas. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very well. Members, we adjourn. We have two other nominees to deal with. We have two others. Thank you. Yeah. That's why. You know, I didn't know. I thought it's easy to discern something. So we will adjourn at this point. We had intended that we could deal with the other one, but you see, it all depends on the number of questions that members throw to the nominees. But I wish we can also try to minimize those ones which are constituency based, because this is not a departmental committee. You know, for me, who does not chair a departmental committee, I'm finding myself lost with no constituency to represent. So if we can minimize and go now this thing about Muranga, Pokot, I don't know which constituency, some wants. Now please, if we can just stick. We are not saying it is, if they have given us examples, look at the Honorable Kikari has given an example of High Grand Falls, and many of you may not know where it is if you look at the geography. This is what this is now. Tiati, Honorable Ichungwa. So please, he talked about Uma Dam, and you know, let's not become so too provincial, because we look too local. Yeah, the aquifers in Turkana, yes. Very well. So can we resume at 2:30? We go down the same place. 2 will be only 30 minutes. Yes. So let's just be fair. 2:30 for 2:30. Yeah.
People don't know Pokot, so they can't give examples of Pokot.